For more realism, I added easy custom details to a miniature flower kit from Earth and Tree. The kit includes laser cut paper for the flowers and leaves and paper coated wire for the stems. I'm starting with the center of the flower. These snowflake looking pieces are the stamen of the flower. The kit instructs to paint the ends black, so I'm softening the transition by adding some brown chalk pastels. It's really hard to see, but there is a tiny laser cut hole in the center of each of these so they can slide onto the wire. To finish the stamens, I need to attach them to the wire, so I'm cutting 12 pieces about 1 3/4 inches. I measured one of the pieces, then eyeballed the rest for variation and to avoid measuring. I'm saving this extra paper-coated wire to make more flowers in the future. Starting with a nice clean cut, I'm adding a bit of white glue and placing the stamen hole over the wire. I like the bit of realism the circular ends add, but for a little bit more detail, I'm adding a small dab of glue on the front and back of each of the circles. This dried really quickly with a domed appearance for dimension. I'm easily shaping the stamen by pushing the pieces up and then rolling them in between my fingers. I'm painting the circular ends with black acrylic paint. Most of the pastels were rubbed off while I was rolling these, so you can probably skip that step. This particular tulip kit comes with a few different options for paper colors, including shades of red and yellow. I chose the kit for making white tulips so I can add my own color and get a variety of different looking flowers from one kit. I'm using watercolor to add the color and using 2 different colors for each flower. While the base color is still wet, I'm adding a darker color in the center and dragging the paint out toward the edges. The watercolors blend nicely and look natural. You could also try watered down acrylic paint, colored pencils, or markers. If you're not sure about a color, you can try it in some of the scrap areas of the paper to see how it'll look before you commit to adding it to one of the laser cut flowers. Before adding the secondary color, I folded each of the flowers onto a blade and painted the back while I still had the base color on my brush. Some of the paint was a custom mix, so I did it this way to make sure the front of the flowers matched the back. I sped up the dry time using a hairdryer and sealed the flowers using Mod Podge. I used matte Mod Podge, but I would probably use gloss next time for a bit of added sheen. The front dried really quickly, then I sealed the back. I'm mimicking the veins you see on flowers using a very thin black marker. Starting in the center, I'm making some lines radiating outward. I flipped the paper over and added the same black lines and some white gel pen lines. I shaped my flowers so the white lines are on the inside. To shape the flower, I'm using some foam and a ball stylus from the Dollar Tree. I'm rolling the large end of the ball stylus in a small circle on each petal. This naturally causes the paper to curl in toward itself and tighten up. If you don't have foam, you could use the palm of your hand, a computer mouse pad, or a few layers of paper towel. If you don't have a ball stylus, it's much harder to find a suitable substitute, although I have used the rounded end of a sewing pin. Ball styluses are really cheap and super handy if you're making miniature crafts, so they're worth the investment. The edges of the petals have very subtle scalloping, which adds to the realism. To assemble, I slid the shaped flower onto the wire and added a bit of glue below the stamen. Each of the flowers has a tiny laser cut hole in the center to make assembly easy. If you're having a hard time getting your flowers onto the wire, make a new cleaner cut. This kit is designed so the stamens are taller than the edges of the petals, which is a very pretty look. These are already looking so good, but we still need to add the leaves. The green paper is a pretty dark sage green that matches the stems, but tulips have a much richer green color. Leaves naturally have some variation, so I'm starting by using a Sharpie to color the edges of the leaves. I'm taming the crazy contrast between the two colors using some acrylic paint. I added the paint full strength and didn't water it down. I'm using the same paint to color each stem so the stems will match the leaves. I'm adding a bit of paint at the very bottom of the flower to mimic those tiny leaves you see where the stem meets the flower. All of the laser cut leaves are the same size and shape, which isn't very realistic. I'm cutting a small sliver off the right side of each leaf for variation. Now some of the leaves are a bit skinnier than others and the sides aren't perfectly symmetrical. To shape the leaf, you can use the large end of the ball stylus on the edge of each leaf and run it up the center. Then you can gently fold the center, making sure not to press a hard line. You can shape your leaves that way if you'd like, but I was much too impatient to do that to each leaf. Instead, I dampened the leaves with watered down glue so they'll hold the shape when they dry, and press them all over the foam with the ball stylus. The dried leaves have a rich green color and are slightly crinkly. Each of the leaves have a tiny tab at the very bottom so you can attach them to the stem. I'm attaching my leaves with white glue toward the top so the leaves will still be visible if the flowers are displayed in a vase. Once the flowers were assembled, I gave them a quick messy coat of gloss Mod Podge. Since Mod Podge is an adhesive, it not only adds some shine, but there is the added benefit of helping the leaves stick to the stem. Consider joining my Patreon either as a free member or paying member for $3 a month, and watch this video next to see my favorite kit I've ever customized.